involved will Trump be in this Congress?
Well, what Donald Trump's calls show is that he has a hold over those two Republicans, and that the vast majority of the Republicans in the House of Representatives were behind Speaker Mike Johnson all the way. In 2018, Nancy Pelosi had to cut a deal with Democrats to retain her speakership. Vanity Fair called that savvy. In 2010, she had to browbeat Democrats for 6 hours behind closed doors to become the speaker then. Speaker Johnson and President-elect Trump pulled this off in 45 minutes. 45 minutes is enough time for you to watch just one Real Housewives of New Jersey episode. And I guarantee you there's more drama in the Real Housewives than there was on the House floor. Democrats and certain members of the media are trying to spin this. This is a great win for Speaker Johnson.
Well, considering with Kevin McCarthy, there were 15 rounds, I believe. Mike, love you to weigh in here.
Yeah, I think that's a nice sanitized version of the events of this week, but there was a ton of drama. There was a ton of dysfunction, the same type of dysfunction we've seen with Republicans in charge of the House over the last, couple of years, every time they've been in charge. I have a really simple take on this. The Republicans won this last election by making some huge promises. They're going to get grocery prices down. They were going to make housing more affordable. They were going to fix the crisis at the border. Donald Trump did not deliver for the Republicans huge majorities in the House and the Senate. They have very narrow majorities in the House and Senate, filled with a lot of extremists that are going to be able to sort of, pull the screws on Speaker Johnson and Donald Trump and pull the agenda away from it. Are they going to be able to get anything done? I'm sort of skeptical that they'll be able to pass anything meaningful that's going to make things easier for the American people. I accept the outcome of this election, that people are really frustrated with inflation. They're frustrated with the Democratic Party. They don't think we did enough, and we need to do a better job articulating how we're going to help people. But I don't see a path for Republicans to be able to get prices down. I don't see a path for them to make housing more affordable, not with a 3-seat majority in the House where there's all this dysfunction and chaos. And God knows what kind of backroom deal with Donald Trump on the phone they had to make with these two Republican members of Congress to install Speaker Johnson again. It doesn't pretend well to the type of leadership and power that he has with his caucus.
Alex, to that point, we can agree Johnson has not had an easy road as Speaker. Your thoughts on how he will be able to navigate this Congress with this very slight majority, with House members threatening to withdraw support if he does not get their specific agendas passed?
Well, look, I think the Speaker of the House job is not an easy job, and no one that wants an easy job has tried to become Speaker of the House. Speaker Johnson knew what he was getting into. Speaker Johnson knows that this time around he has an even narrower majority than before, and he has survived these revolts, these internal dissensions from his members before. If you remember, he brought Ukraine aid to the floor last year or a year before that, and he faced some grumbling on that, but he was able to withstand that because he understands the moment. He understands his members. He's humble, he's smart, and he's willing to work for the American people. Republicans have the trifecta. They have the presidency, they have the House, and they have a not insignificant majority in the U.S. Senate. This provides them, us, an incredible platform to be able to deliver for the American people. I think that's going to happen. If you win by one vote, you still win. I think we're going to see some legislation passed in the very early days of President Trump's second term.
Mike, the Congress just wrapped what's being called the least productive in decades. Now, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries is pledging that House Democrats will find a bipartisan common ground with Republicans. What could that look like?
Yeah, well, I would encourage Democrats to do whatever they can to get some stuff done, because I think the American people are pretty frustrated, whether it be the crisis at the border, whether it be affordability and economic issues. Like, we have a responsibility to try to root politics back in improving people's lives, which I think we haven't done a great job of. But I also think at the same time, Democrats need to fight strong against some of the more extreme things that Republicans are going to do. Donald Trump is already filling his cabinet with Project 2025 resume bank people, which is some of the most extreme policies that you can possibly imagine, just some really far right stuff that I think is beyond the pale of what most Americans voted for. And one thing I agree with Alex here is, like, look, Republicans have control of the House, they have control of the Senate, they have control of the White House. You win by one vote, you win. But you win by one vote, you have to go govern. And 8 years ago, Donald Trump had the House, Senate, and the White House, and he really legislatively didn't get anything done to help the American people. Very few bills were passed. You're right, this last one was the least productive, but I have very little confidence that they're going to be able to do anything to get, grocery prices down, to make housing more affordable, to solve the crisis at the border. Maybe they'll be able to come up with a bipartisan deal on the border, because I think everybody agrees that needs to be handled. But they made some really big promises. They've got to deliver.
Alex, I have about 30 seconds. I'd love to give you the last word. And how do you think this bipartisan relationship will work out?
Well, one major piece of legislation that was passed during President Trump's first term were the Trump tax cuts. which President Trump wants to extend. That is something that can be done legislatively. I also think there's bipartisan agreement for no tax on tips and to rebuild our military. Our Navy is hurting. Shipbuilding is behind. Congress can work with the White House to make that happen.
Alex Zdan, Mike Nellis, always enjoy our conversations. Thank you again.
Thanks for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.